I've got some bad news, guys. We may actually be better off paying for things in the future pervasive crypto economy. What do I mean by that? Web 2 gave us a lot of things for free, but it also stripped us of our privacy, freedom of speech, and personal sovereignty, even exploiting and abusing knowledge of our economic intentions, and it paid us an equivalent price of absolutely nothing. This has a lot to do with the human tendencies to misvalue short term incentives over long term detriments and to seek out the greatest network effects. But I think we have a real chance to do it all better in the next cycle with Cardano. Ready? Let's go. Today, we're going to discuss the bargain we did make in Web 2 and the bargain we should demand in Web 3, the Central Bank of Spain launching something you probably don't want to use, Ledger launching something you will probably want to use, and rogue Galaxies revealing their plan for a Cardano place where you might want to play. If you saw this image, it immediately questioned whether or not this was a fraudulent transaction because the payment seems to be being made to a small calculator, a small cheap calculator, as opposed to an actual payment terminal. Or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Okay, everybody, check out this post. I'm going to forgive the obvious, blatant affiliation of this poster. He probably doesn't know any better. He says, a dangerous precedent. In the crypto space, we should normalize paying for products and paying for networks. When we offload that, we get the free app economy and payment for order flow, where we become the product rather than the customer. He follows that up with, misaligned incentives also lead to quality degradation. Consider how much worse journalism has gotten since we stopped paying for it, or how all free games are now just mini games with no real content. Let's not break Web3. We've got a chance to get it right. And he's correct. These technology platforms are never really giving us anything for free. This is an old story. We all know how this goes. On Robinhood, someone is buying your order flow. On the big social media platforms, you are the product. People are advertising to you. They're mining you of your data. You have no privacy. They're selling that data off to corporations who want to leverage it. We're giving up all kinds of things for these free services. And in most cases, most people are happy to do that because humans tend to misweigh short-term benefit against long-term detriment. In the short term, things that are good are given more value than long-term things that slowly are bad in small doses. We also tend to seek out these platforms that have the greatest network effects. Sure, there are platforms you can go use right now to do some of the same things you do on the big social media platforms, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, all these kinds of platforms, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. There are other platforms where you could do similar things that might have better guarantees that they won't strip you of your freedom of speech and privacy and personal sovereignty. And you don't have to trade on Robinhood. You could trade somewhere else where they don't sell off your order flow. But we don't, because we seek out the places where we can experience the best network effects. And because humans tend to weigh short-term benefit, the short-term benefit of not paying for anything, against these long-term detriments of being stripped of these other things and getting nothing in return except for use of the service, we all kind of congregate in these places that have the greatest network effects, where our communications, our posts, our TikToks, our videos, our Instagram photos can reach the largest number of people. So we have this vicious circle where people don't want to pay anything, so they go to the places that strip them of their, various freedoms, and everybody else who doesn't actually want to be stripped of those things has to go there too to achieve the network effects. It doesn't have to be this way. I think a lot of people wouldn't make this bargain, the bargain that we all kind of had to accept in Web 2, if they actually realized what it was, if it was more obvious. For instance, let's imagine you're in the market for a new fridge and some guy comes to your door knocking and he's like, "Hey, I heard you're in the market for a fridge." And you're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. How do you even know that? Like, the fridge is, I need a fridge, but how would you even know that?" And he's like, "Don't worry about it. I just know." And then he proceeds to give you this pitch. He's like, "Listen, I'm going to give you a free fridge, completely free fridge. You're going to pay nothing for it." And you're like, "Okay, that sounds pretty sweet. How is that going to work?" He's like, "Okay, here's the deal. I'm going to give you this free fridge. And every time you put something in the fridge, you're just going to scan the barcode just so the fridge knows what's in there. Because it's going to, like keep the temperature right for you or something." And you're like, "But what else are you doing with those barcodes? Why do you want those barcodes? Like, I don't think you really need the barcodes to set the temperature. Like, I'm just going to set the temperature to, like a couple degrees above freezing or something like that, and then I'll be good. So I don't really need you to like program it because I'm gonna have a whole bunch of stuff in there and there's probably just one temperature. So it doesn't even make sense." He's like, "Don't worry about it. We just need you to scan those barcodes." And then he's like, "And also, we're going to, when you run out of stuff, we're going to keep track of that too. We've got like cameras inside the fridge. And so if you buy a bunch of stuff and you actually consume it, like if you run out of eggs, our cameras are going to notice that you run out of eggs, and we're going to give you a reminder about the eggs." And you're like, "Okay, okay, that part sounds good. It's all kind of weird, but that sounds good." And then he's like, "Okay, well, just go ahead and sign for this. And also, there's like 7 pages of terms of use, terms of service. And if you want to read those, you can. But you're smart, so you actually read them. And what you realize is that every time you buy something, they're going to use that to send salesmen by your house. Like, if you buy too much beer, they're going to send some salesman to your house every day who's going to try to, if you're buying and drinking like Coors Light, they're going to send some guy by to sell you Chevrolet Camaros or Ford Mustangs or Harley Davidsons. Whether you want them or not, they're just going to send a guy by every single day who's going to try to sell you a Camaro, a Mustang, or a Harley. And when you run out of something, if you like eat too many eggs, like say you make omelets for everybody one morning and you run out of eggs, they're going to send a guy to your local grocery store who's going to buy all the eggs at the grocery store. So when you go to buy eggs, there's going to be no eggs, but he's going to be out front of the grocery store because he intercepted your order flow for eggs. He knew your intention, your economic intention was going to be to go buy more eggs because you ran out. And he's going to have all the eggs from your whole grocery store. And he's going to be selling them not for the $3 you're accustomed to paying in the grocery store, because now he has all the eggs. There are no more eggs in the store. He's going to be out front with the eggs and he's going to sell them to you for $10. Instead of $3 a dozen, it's going to be $10 a dozen. And he's going to do this every time you run out of anything. Anything he knows you really want, he's going to run to the store, buy up those things, all of them, so you can't buy them. In fact, he's going to go to all the stores in your neighborhood, in your whole city. He's going to buy all those things. And he's going to wait out in front of the store and he's going to have marked it up like triple. So they're intercepting your order flow. They're sending salesmen by. And then they're also taking your data and they're sending that to all the merchants in your whole neighborhood, your whole city. And they're saying, "Hey, look, we've got all the aggregate data from everybody's fridges. And these guys all need milk this week. They all need to buy milk. So you guys should just all jack up the price of milk. They all drank way too much milk this week. They're a bunch of milk fiends. So just jack up the price of milk. Everybody can jack up the price of milk. That's what you should do." Okay, maybe we can't accuse the social media platforms of doing that last bit, but we don't really know. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors. But we do know they're doing things like selling the order flow. They're doing the equivalent of having the guy go to the store and buy all the eggs so that he can then sell them to you out in front of the store at a greater price. We do know that's happening. We also know they are sending the guy to your house, whether you want a Camaro or not. They're sending a salesman from the local Chevrolet dealer over to your house every single day to try to sell you a Camaro. Even if you had no intention of ever buying a Camaro, you're like, yo, I just like Coors Light. I don't want a Camaro. They're going to send this guy by your house every single day so often to beat you into submission until you finally decide you are going to buy a Camaro. That's the bargain we made in Web 2, but it doesn't have to be the bargain we accept in Web 3. We can demand something very different. In Web 3, we can say, I don't want your data stealing fridge that's going to sell my order flow and allow you to send the Camaro dealer, the Camaro salesman by my house every day. We can say, I'm just going to go out and buy a fridge, because even though it's going to be painful to spend that money to buy the fridge on day one, my life is going to be a lot better not having to deal with the Camaro salesman every single day, not having to have my egg requirements intercepted by the egg middleman every single time I need eggs. Over the course of the lifetime of the fridge, it's a much better bargain for me to just buy the fridge on day one and not have to deal with any of that. We can actually have that in Web3. And it might even be great for crypto. Obviously, we can do a lot of things with Web3, including, protecting our data, creating greater privacy barriers. We could use things like the midnight sidechain of Cardano and only give up our data when we really want to intentionally. There are a lot of things like that. But even beyond all those things, at a more base level, one of the great potential use cases for crypto that hasn't really ever caught on, it's never been used on a widespread basis, is microtransactions. Sure, we all hate paying, whatever it is now, $13 a month for Netflix. Like, we hate these subscriptions. I do, at least. Hate all these little subscriptions that are just, sort of magically subtracted from the bank account every month. But with crypto and in Web3, we could have microtransactions where you just pay for the use of a technology platform on a per transaction basis. It doesn't really make sense in the previous and currently existing era of debit cards and credit cards. It's like the transaction fees just become a little too much, and the banks don't really want to bear that burden, using debit cards necessarily. But with crypto, we could do that. We could, instead of being monetized by all the technology platforms, making us the customers the product, we could just pay on a microtransaction basis using something like Cardano. We could just pay a tiny bit of ADA each time we want to use a platform. And it might even have a beneficial effect on all of society in terms of making us think about how much we're actually using these platforms, how much screen time we're actually getting. That's a different conversation about whether or not there's any kind of detrimental effect to the amount of screen time that humans are getting right now. But regardless of where you come out on that debate, it probably would be better if we just paid for some of these things. In this next iteration of all this, in Web 3, in Web 2, we were the product. Why don't we just make Twitter the product? Why don't we make Facebook the product? Why don't we make Instagram the product? And sure, you could argue, no, that might have a deleterious effect on the amount of people who are willing to use Instagram. And I probably won't want to use Instagram if, there aren't as many people on it. But really, when we say that, what we're saying is that's a problem, because then Instagram won't have a monopoly. Twitter won't have a monopoly. Facebook won't have a monopoly. TikTok won't have a monopoly. But isn't that in and of itself good? If we have a diversity of these platforms all competing for each of these niches, won't they have to offer us a better product at a lower price if they actually have competitors? People are up in arms right now about what's becoming more and more an apparent history of censorship on certain platforms. Could that have existed to as extreme a degree if those platforms actually had competitors? I think that becomes the case. I think the monopolies become less severe, more restricted, just by virtue of economics. if we actually have to pay for these products. And I think it won't actually be that much. I think the cost to use Twitter for a couple of hours, to peruse Instagram for 15 minutes, to watch a bunch of TikToks, I think the cost can be so minimal that we get a much better deal. And the platforms actually have normal revenue flow from their actual customers instead of this weird bargain we have now where the people who should be the customer are really the product. Check this out. The Central Bank of Spain is launching what they are calling a w-CBDC, or a wholesale CBDC. What is that exactly? So that is not a retail central bank digital currency. It's a wholesale central bank digital currency that'll be used for interbank transfers, for balancing assets between different financial institutions. It's not actually going to end up in the hands of the people, apparently. But the Central Bank of Spain is launching what they're calling the program in the field of w-CBDCs, for which they seek collaboration of interested participants, both financial institutions and technology solution providers. So I think this is going to be an emerging trend where banks, they are very tempted by the weird, dystopic behavioral economic stuff they can get into with retail CBDCs. By that, I'm thinking of things like, the bank wanting to do different things to different demographics. Like they may want young people to save their money more, so they give them a higher savings rate, whereas retired people, they give them a much smaller interest rate to encourage spending by that much more well-heeled retired population, or people at the end of their working years who might have more assets. They might want them to spend more, so they give them a much smaller interest rate, so they're less incentivized to save, more incentivized to spend and stimulate the economy. I think all the central banks are going to be so tempted by the weird dystopian economic world they can create with retail CBDCs that they're all going to trend in that direction. But there is a little bit of a trend developing right now that we're seeing here, where they're going to kind of dip their toe into that CBDC world by starting out with these wholesale CBDCs, going under various names, but basically because they want to do some of that weird behavioral economic stuff, but they also know that stuff that's so tempting to them is also the stuff that's going to create the biggest public backlash. While you probably have no interest in that Spanish central bank w-CBDC, you might be interested in using this. Ledger has a brand new product called the Ledger Stacks. You can see it is much bigger and looks a lot more like an actual phone. They say Ledger Stacks, and the price is a lot higher too. They say Ledger Stacks was made for the day-to-day use of your crypto and NFTs with clarity and comfort. Clear sign your transactions with ease on the world's first curved e-ink touchscreen. Name it, customize the lock screen with your favorite NFT or photo, make Ledger Stacks yours, and trust your peace of mind to Ledger's uncompromising security. You can see a couple different pictures of it here. I love, obviously, a lot of people in Cardano have already commented that Cardano is front and center. That is like the marquee spot there. It's even a better spot than Bitcoin or Ethereum got. That's fantastic. They might have been well off to just sort of leave Solana off the demo screen there, but they did put Cardano in the marquee spot, so I can't blame them too much. And I can't really tell what they're talking about with the curved screen. I can't tell if it's like curving around this edge or what exactly is going on, but it does look cool. And it's quite expensive. I remember I've got a mini Ledger Nano S's. They were quite a bit less than this amount right here. But if you are interested in the Ledger Stacks, don't forget there's an affiliate link below. That means if you offer this, if you decide to buy one of these and you order it through my link, which is in the description box below, I will make a small commission. Seriously, though, if you've got a lot of crypto, if it's an amount of crypto you would feel bad about losing, you probably should have a hardware wallet. It doesn't have to be one of these super expensive Ledger Stacks. You could just get a Ledger Nano S or any other quality crypto hardware wallet. It doesn't have to be an expensive one. But if you've got a lot of crypto, an amount of crypto that you'd be crushed by losing, you should probably get a hardware wallet. Finally, Rogue Galaxies has dropped their white paper. You'll remember, I've talked about Rogue Galaxies a few times. Rogue Galaxies is the game coming to us from Endmaker. They build themselves as the ultimate sci-fi roguelike MMO on Cardano. The reason why I think Rogue Galaxies is kind of intriguing is because we have a few projects that are sort of hybrids that blend, sort of blur the line between game and metaverse to various extents. Cornucopias, I would put in that category, and Virtua too. Virtua is, I think, is very much a metaverse, but it also has some game elements to it. So they're kind of, blurring that line a little bit. But Rogue Galaxies doesn't have any pretenses at all of being a metaverse that I've detected so far. They seem to be just a true standalone game, which is kind of interesting to me because it's sort of predictable that we would get metaverses in a crypto ecosystem like Cardano, long before we got any games. But I think it's intriguing that we've already got a true game coming to Cardano sort of this early in the evolution of, big projects on Cardano. Obviously, this is only possible because of Endmaker. But as we go through the white paper, it sort of has the obligatory overview and team sections. And then they get right into what we would encounter in the game, including space exploration, planet expeditions, gathering of resources, social hubs where you can do things like communicate with other players and NPCs and form friendships or even groups for later adventures. So there are some social elements to this. I wouldn't say that it's any kind of metaverse game hybrid, but it does have some very interesting social elements. You can also upgrade your spaceship and gear, overview and scan surrounding planets, repair, refuel, and maintain your spaceship and gear, trade via marketplaces. Lots of interesting things going on. Then they get into some of the elements of the gaming and the blockchain elements of this game, including players, spaceships, spaceship game functions, planets, story and lore. And then they're going to get into the roadmap, which I covered a little bit last time. I keep saying with all these metaverse and gaming projects, it's really hard to tell if they're going to be awesome or not awesome until we actually get in there. One of the cool things about Rogue Galaxies, like I mentioned last time, is they're building it out in modules. So instead of us having to wait for them to build the entire game before we find out if it's cool or not cool, they're going to build it out module by module and release the first module to us when that module's finished. So we'll find out a lot sooner with Rogue Galaxies whether or not this is going to be fun. I have high hopes, but I hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.